Hello IP3 and welcome to our week 6 science review class. Last week we started learning science chapter 3, life cycles, and we talked about the life cycles of butterflies and of apple trees. This week we're going to look at the life cycle of a frog, and we're also going to look at life cycles of birds, mammals and reptiles. So let's get started. Okay, so Science Chapter 3, Life Cycles, Lesson 2, the life cycles of frogs, birds, reptiles and mammals. Now that might sound like a lot, but really it's not that much. Frog life cycles are quite complicated and we'll spend most of our time talking about frogs. But birds, reptiles and mammals, they have very similar life cycles. So there's not a great deal to learn about there. So, as we learned last week, some insects go through many changes during their life cycle. We talked about how a butterfly starts as an egg, hatches as a caterpillar, then it goes into a chrysalis, a pupa, and then out of it a butterfly emerges, which looks completely different to every other stage. Another group of animals that completely change form during their life cycle is amphibians. Amphibians have very different forms through their life cycles. And the most famous amphibian that you know of is a frog, so that's what we're going to look at today. So, a frog goes through metamorphosis. I said that word last week as well when I was talking about insects. Metamorphosis is when an animal changes into completely different forms during its life cycle. So you can see this outline here. We've got the egg, the tadpole, the froglet, and the frog. The tadpole stage is completely different to the adult frog stage, as we will talk about now. Okay, so like insects, amphibians start their lives as eggs. Female adult frogs lay many eggs in water, and these eggs are called frog spawn. So these eggs are very different from insect eggs and from bird eggs. They look a bit like jelly. Like if you touch them, it feels like jelly. And like I say, these are called frog spawn. Now the next stage of a frog's life cycle is the tadpole stage. Tadpoles almost look a bit like fish. They hatch from the frog spawn and they live in the same water. So tadpoles have a long tail to help them swim. They have gills to breathe like a fish, and tadpoles do not have any legs. Now, as the tadpole grows, it goes through many changes. It begins to grow lungs and legs. And at this stage, where it has a tail and legs, it's called a froglet. So it's not quite an adult frog yet. So you see it has a tail, like the tadpole does, but it also has legs, which the tadpole did not have. Eventually, during the final stage, the froglet's tail and gills disappear. So it no longer has the tail, no longer has the gills to breathe. And its legs and its lungs fully develop. So this is an adult frog and it can live on land or in water. So like I say, the frog life cycle is very interesting because it goes through metamorphosis where it completely changes. So that means that it starts as a tadpole living in water with gills and a tail, and eventually it grows up, loses the gills and the tail, grows legs and lungs, and can live on land. So it has completely different stages in its life cycle, similar to the butterfly. Now, like amphibians, reptiles and birds are born from eggs, but their life cycles are maybe not quite as interesting. Now, reptiles such as snakes, turtles, and crocodiles usually lay their eggs on land, and reptile eggs have a soft, leathery shell. So it feels soft when you touch it, different to a bird egg, and very different to the frog spawn that we just talked about. Now, birds make nests for their eggs, and bird eggs have a hard shell. So reptiles and birds, the first stage is very similar. They both start as eggs, but they have different textures. Now, unlike amphibians, reptiles and birds do not change form during their life cycle. A baby bird or a baby reptile looks similar to its adult form. With the amphibian, the tadpole looks completely different to the frog. With the butterfly, the caterpillar looks completely different to the butterfly. But here you can see a baby reptile, a baby turtle, and it looks similar to its adult form. It's smaller, but it is similar. Same with the bird. Although the baby bird, the chick, is much smaller than the adult bird, it's got similar features. Same beak, same eyes, same wings. It's just smaller and not fully grown yet. Okay, so just to talk more about the bird life cycle, a bird lays an egg, an adult bird lays an egg. When it's big enough, the baby bird breaks through the egg. This is called hatching. So when this baby bird, the chick, hatches through the egg, breaks through the egg, that is called hatching. Then you've got a baby bird called a chick. The chick grows and develops feathers, and eventually it grows big enough to become an adult bird. The adult bird can reproduce, lay eggs, and the cycle continues. The reptile follows a similar life cycle to the bird. So baby reptile hatches from the egg. It's an infant stage at this stage, grows bigger, and then it's an adult, can lay eggs. So not many changes in those life cycles. Even though birds and reptiles are very different animals, their life cycles are very similar. Okay, now similarly to birds and reptiles, mammals do not change much during their life cycle. They start small and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they grow into adults, but they do not change form. So one way though that they are different, birds and reptiles hatch from eggs, but the offspring, the children of mammals, do not hatch from eggs. Mammals give birth to live mammals. So there's actually even fewer changes in a mammal's life cycle than there is with a reptile or a bird. So, like other animals, there is an egg involved. Mammals are from eggs, but they develop inside the mother's body. So that egg is inside the mother's body, but the egg does not come out of the mother's body. The live animal does. So when there's an egg growing inside a mother's body, this is called pregnancy. So mammals give birth to live mammals. Their name changes from species to species, but it's still a live mammal. So humans have babies, dogs have puppies, look at the puppy, cats have kittens, bears have cubs, and cows have calves. There's other names for other species, but those are some that you should know. Okay, so these animals, they grow and they develop as they get older. Humans go through infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and then old age. And during the adult stage, mammals can reproduce. Similar life cycles for all species of mammals. They just grow and they change, but they do not completely change form like the frogs did or like the butterfly did. And again, similarly to the reptile and the bird, it grows and changes, but it doesn't change form. Okay, IP3, that is the end of this week's lecture. Before we finish, let me explain your homework to you. Your homework worksheet this week is very similar to last week, but based on this week's lesson. So you should have this worksheet, IP3, Science Chapter 3, Life Cycles, Review Worksheet, Week 6. Section 1, you have 4 words: pregnancy, nest, metamorphosis, hatching. And here you have the 4 meanings of those words. Match the word to its meaning. Section 2, you have the life cycle of a bird, an adult bird. Look at 5, 6, 7, and 8. Put these 4 stages in the correct order. Very easy. Section 3 is a bit more difficult. Like last week with the butterfly, I want you to draw, label, and explain all of the stages in the life cycle of a frog. So I want you to give an explanation of each stage. Like last week, this section will be marked out of 7. 2 points for correct ordering and labeling, 3 points for how good your explanations are, and 2 points for how good your drawings are, giving a total out of 7. And the whole worksheet is therefore out of 15. Okay, IP3, that is the end of our science lesson. And again, this is week 6, so it should be the end of our summer review videos. So next year, you will go into IP4. I've already told you that I will be your English teacher next year, but I will not be your science teacher again. So soon you will be in IP4 and you will be learning science with teacher Charlotte. So I hope you've enjoyed our science lessons this year, not just the videos, but when you were in IP3. I enjoyed teaching you science, and I look forward to seeing you again in IP4 in our English lessons. So until then, bye-bye IP3.